At it again with another edition of the Club Dub podcast, as you see on your screen right before you, presented by sportsmockery.com. Erik and Kevin here talking Bears and Giants. Dhruv will join us in a minute. He's had what he calls a long day. He'll join us from the car to talk about this miserable offensive performance. Just looks like they're playing a different era of football these days. We kind of was hoping, I set really one goal coming into this season. I wanted to see the Matt Nagy era completely tossed out, and I wanted to see an era of offensive football that wouldn't resemble anything what we saw in that Cleveland game last year. And while it wasn't that bad on Sunday, no touchdowns, red zone was bad, drops were bad. It was just it looks they are in a league of their own offensively to start this season again, and it just seems like we're circling the wagons. How did you take the game, and initial thoughts on the loss and being 2-2?
Well, they look like a team that, doesn't have a lot of talent offensively, especially. I mean, the offensive line was completely overwhelmed at times, 6 sacks allowed, a lot more pressures and hits than that. Justin's continuing to struggle, diagnosing certain things. He was better, I will admit that, but he's still struggling to complete even some easy passes from time to time, which is frustrating because you need to be able to complete the layups if you want to make things easier on yourself. And he doesn't do that a lot of the times, but he was more accurate this time around. He made better decisions, and you like to see that, but he still only had 174 yards. He completed only half his passes, and this is a running theme for him throughout the start of this season. It's not all his fault. We established this. The line wasn't great. The wide receivers outside of Mooney are, backups pretty much. And Cole Kmet, he's proving that he's a number 2 tight end at best. So when it's clear you have such a dearth of offensive talent, everything needs to be executed perfectly in order for an offense to function at an even reasonable level. And that's just not happening, especially when all these guys are in a brand new system under Luke Getsy. So you throw all these things into a perfect storm like you have, and you're going to get offensive showings like we've seen for the past month.
And neither of us are football coaches, but you follow the game close enough to where you're able to draw parallels from the week before. And Drew pointed this out a couple times on Twitter, and he's been super adamant about it. Where were the play designs to change things up on 3rd and short? We saw a little bit of it in the Green Bay game in several drives. We saw Getsy drop some plays with a lot of motions and different. It just seems so vanilla, like 3rd and 2 from the 50-yard line. And we're going to talk about that game-changing punt and how dumb that was to do that. But where is Luke Getsy now on your grading scale as a coach? Because to me, obviously, I think he's done some good things, and he said he wants to win football games, and he's said and done a lot of cool things. But Sunday was miserable, man. I mean, where was the creativity on plays where you needed to pick up? They were 3rd and short so many times in that game, and it just seemed like they ended up kicking field goals or punting the ball away when it seemed like you would have been able to maybe, throw a jet sweep in there, maybe do a wildcat. I know people are scarred from the Nagy era with the wildcat, but something a little different than just pound the ball up the middle, try and run right through Sam Mustipher and Lucas Patrick, who struggled immensely Sunday, and that was evident. This was second half play, and nothing changed.
It's a fair question, that you wish he could have had a little more creativity involved just to sort of make things easier, keep the Giants off their toes. But the bottom line is it feels like Getsy has to keep it vanilla because that's pretty much all these guys can execute at this point. When you try to throw something a little more complex their way, it almost always seems like there's a breakdown somewhere. Sometimes it's the tight end trying to throw a block on the edge. Sometimes it's the center whiffing on the defensive tackle. It's always something when they're trying to, execute a play that seems a little more complex. Screen passes, whatever have you. And when that happens, you have to try and keep things as simple as you can. Running the ball is a bit simpler for them, which is why they're committed to that, which is something I actually appreciate from Getsy. That was the frustrating thing about Nagy. He never committed to running the football, whereas Getsy, he at least is trying to stick to that identity that we're going to try and run it as often as we can, try to protect Justin as best we can. And he's doing the best he can with what he's got. And that's the best way I can put it right now. Do I wish, he had the answers for everything? Of course, but he's a first-year offensive coordinator in the NFL. He's learning just as much, excuse me, as these other guys are. So it's all a process at this point. And, I think it's going to get better towards the end of the season once guys are, more familiar with the system. But this is a talent issue right now, and that's pretty much abundantly clear at this point.
Our guy Dhruv is here joining us from the car. Long day, my man. How you doing? How you holding up?
What's up, guys? Doing all right. Doing all right. I traveled across 2 time zones today with some delays, and now it's rainy here in Denver. So, doing okay though, guys. How are you?
Not too bad. I mean, I'm a little shocked at what we saw on Sunday. Not gonna lie. I don't have. We know this team's not very good. We knew that from the start of the year. But we want to see, just like we want to see Justin take his layups. I want to see this Bears team take their layups and beat teams that they should beat. Now, Daniel Jones was the better quarterback on Sunday, and that's a problem. I thought that the game plan should have been right away being able to, slow down a guy like Barkley. And I think the Bears, they did the best they could. I mean, he's such an unbelievable talent. But that was just with the rollouts and the play design from Brian Dable, who just coached circles around Alan Williams all first half, and then in the second half, even with Tyrod Taylor in there. My biggest worry now is moving forward is, aside from the confidence of the offense, is whether or not we're going to get to a place where we're going to actually know where the standards are, offensively. Does that kind of make sense? Because when they played Green Bay, it's like, okay, we saw some great play designs. We saw some things change. And then on Sunday against a weaker opponent, it's like they put half the playbook in the trash and just they wanted to run up the middle on 3rd and 2 and then punt from the 50-yard line when you're down 8 points. I mean, why such a conservative game plan? And are you as frustrated as I am? Because it was such a winnable game on Sunday. I mean, even win ugly, we're going to have a lot of those games. We've accepted that. But the fact that they couldn't do that and didn't even score a touchdown it's just ridiculous, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the funny thing is both teams probably marked each other as when the schedule came out, because both the Bears. I mean, point. I catch was the offensive.
Sounds like we're losing Dhruv here.
Yeah,
I was a little bit disappointed.
Oh, hey Dhruv, we might be losing
me?
you a little bit. You're good now. It's just cutting in and out. You good
Okay.
now? You back on?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me fine? Is this better?
Yeah, You're good.
Okay. What I was saying was, I mean, yeah, the funny thing is, I mean, both teams probably marked each other as wins when the schedule first came out. But the Bears just honestly incompetent yesterday in many, many phases. Alan Williams didn't make adjustments until way too late in the first half.
Yeah, he might be in a dead zone. Hey Dhruv, we'll get back to you in a little bit. Sounds like your internet's cutting a little bit in and out. I don't know if it's the weather or something, but maybe we'll talk. We'll get back to you in just a second here. I think what Dhruv was trying to say is, like, Alan Williams was I think a lot of us were wondering why there was no QB contain on Daniel Jones, who, we knew he was going to turn the ball over. He did a couple of times. But the fact that he was able to escape the pocket one time after another, I don't know if this is a consequence of, maybe having linebackers playing all new positions and maybe being a little short injury wise right now. No Matt Adams. Al-Qadim Muhammad played, but I don't know if he was there from. I don't know if they would have thrown him. We saw Brisker start to be a little bit more of the read in the second half, but I felt like that was done too late.
And that's fair. One of the big reasons the bootleg was so effective was because the Bears couldn't really stop Saquon. The bootleg is only effective in that situation when you're running the ball well. If you're not running the ball well, containing the bootleg is much easier. But because Saquon was having such a good first half and good game overall, Jones was able to, his fakes were very effective. That's one thing about Daniel Jones' game that you can give him credit for. He's an excellent faker when it comes to play action and all those sorts of things. So I think the Bears were biting on that because they knew they had to stop Saquon and because Jones was selling the fakes so well. And his mobility is his greatest strength at this point in his career. So it's a bunch of things. Yes, the Bears were making mistakes and not keeping contained, but at the same time, there were reasons that was happening. Saquon was running well. Jones was selling the fakes really well. It was a good game plan on the, by the Giants coaching staff, and they executed it really well. The Bears did make adjustments, and I'll point this out. It was still a 20-12 game, and there were chances for the Bears to really take advantage. They got into the Giants' territory a bunch of times in that game inside the 30-yard line. They just weren't scoring touchdowns, and that's what it ultimately comes down to. They settled for field goals way too many times, and when you do that, you're going to probably end up losing more often than you win. So, it's a recurring theme with them that they either settle for field goals or just can't sustain drives. And until they learn how to score touchdowns consistently, there's going to be a lot of these ugly, close games, or they're just going to get blown out by teams that can score touchdowns.
I thought a big turning point in that game, there's a few things in there, obviously, that, changed the moment. The punt, I think, was the biggest one, and the one that's going to stick out to a lot of fans because, listen, good NFL coaches, aggressive NFL coaches with good offenses, guys like Andy Reid, would never even dream of punting in a situation like that. I think that was a big game changer. But the drive, the Dante Pettis drop, and then the drop before that on on third down was the tight end 2. I don't remember his name.
I forget what his Wesco. Is that right?
Sounds right. I'd have to look up his name. He was the second string tight end coming in there. Fields was on the run.
Griffin was out, so he was missed.
So you see Fields roll out to the right, made a guy miss. It was actually a pretty nice move in the pocket. And he kind of, everybody watched that Mahomes throw last night for the touchdown where he kind of danced over and just tossed it over. Fields did one of those yesterday, but it was, it wasn't in the red zone. He did it, dumped it off to his tight end, and tight end had cement shoes, didn't go out and move, and he kind of just, let the ball hit him in the hands and fall. He catches that ball and dives across. You have a new set of downs, and you're playing to maybe go back and take the lead. And then obviously the Dante Pettis drop. I mean, when you have a quarterback who is clearly struggling with confidence, when you have a quarterback that is, trying to learn a new offense, and he clearly doesn't, there might be a little bit of trust issues there with guys not named Darnell Mooney. When you don't have that, and then you go out and drop passes like that in games where you're already struggling to get anything going offensively, I mean, it's just such a kick below the belt. And to have two of them on the same drive on third and short, it's unacceptable, and it can't happen. And that Dante Pettis drop sucks. I know a lot of people will remember that because it hit him in the hands, but don't forget about the tight end drop right before that. That would have also been a first down. This team operates very well. I've noticed first down play calling seems to go really well for this team. Second and short play calling, I've not been a fan of all year. I think second and short, they find themselves, because they're running the ball so effectively, and they love running the ball on first down. I don't have the splits in front of me, but I would say they, definitely run the ball a lot more on first downs. And when they find themselves in a second and short situation, which they did a lot in New York, take your shots down the field, because if you have an effective running game, why are there no more play calls being drawn up to, pick up chunk yardage in those situations and stop running the ball, right up the middle? Like, I just don't. And again, this is a podcast. This isn't a coaching show. We've not been there. But seriously, like, we've seen Getsy call some great plays. Why was the playbook so closed? That is the question I want answered. I don't know if I'll get it answered, but man, it's frustrating on third and short, second and short, leading to third and short, and just not being able to pick it up. It killed him yesterday.
No question. And I think, the decision to punt late in the game is absolutely one of the key decisions that pretty much decided it. But I think the one that sort of set the tone for the entire afternoon came in the red zone when they were at the Giants' 4-yard line, I think it was. It was fourth and short. Everything screamed going for the touchdown in that situation. And then instead they decided to kick the really short field goal. And that pretty much, sent the message that the Bears were in sort of conservative mode the entire day.
Dumb.
Yeah. So, dumb. When you set that mindset, it sort of, overflows into everything else. And, unfortunately, Getsy is sort of going by what Eberflus is instructing him to do, which is try to protect the quarterback, try to not, commit too many turnovers, all those sorts of things. And he's handcuffed by the personnel on top of all of that. So it's really hard to call a complex, comprehensive game plan in those situations when you don't have the pieces necessary. And, you're going up against an aggressive defense under Wink Martindale that's well coached. It's a difficult situation. They had their opportunities. He got guys open on a number of occasions, but every time it felt like somebody missed their assignment, leaving Justin to try and make something out of nothing. And then when he finally does in those situations, it's either dropped or some other, stupid mistake. So, it's a conglomeration of things. And I think coaching's towards the bottom of the totem pole in terms of the overall problems with this offense. The conservative nature is annoying more than anything right now. I'm really hoping that once they start to get better players, they'll open it up a bit more. But
yeah,
for the time being, I understand why they're being more conservative. It's because they don't trust guys. And I find it hard to blame them because it seems like every time they drop back to pass, more often than not, there's going to be somebody in Justin's lap before he hits the back step. So, most of the receivers not named Mooney aren't going to get open consistently. It's just, all the predictions before the season began are sort of coming true right before our eyes. And it's frustrating to see because there were initial signs that maybe they might have a little bit more than people expected. But now as the season's sort of settling in, it's dawning on us that there really is such a stark talent deficiency that Ryan Poles inherited, and he's going to need time to, fix. And fans these days just aren't that patient. And, this is going to be a bit of a slog this season, barring something unexpected.
Right. I think the thing that worries me, and I did a lot of thinking on this today because we know that this team isn't good. We knew that coming into this year. We're still going to watch because we like it, but I wanted to look at this year with a broad brush, broad painting. And one of the things I'm looking at right away is coaching moments and teaching moments. In the first couple weeks, lack of penalties. They were right there. They scrapped and clawed. They won the turnover battles. Yes, they lost to Green Bay, but they played, they played well. They played situationally. They played complementary football on both sides of the ball. Sunday was the first sign of not playing complementary football and also having a way too conservative coaching style. And it's too early for me to say this, but I'm still worried about the longevity issues that could have on an offense of guys who are going to be here next year. And even when they add talent, like you said, you hope they open it up, right? Because you don't win in the NFL with an 80s offense. I don't care. When is the conversation going to be, we know we're not good, but we got to let these guys play football. We got to teach them something because think about it. You're going to have Komet's going to be on the roster next year. Mooney's on the roster next year. Fields is on the roster next year. You'll have quite a few, Montgomery might not be here, but Khalil Herbert to be on the offense next year, Ebner, like Velus Jones, those guys will all be on the 52-man roster next year. And I think it's more important to just give it a shot and go. And I know these guys are their first year. They want they want coaching job. It's a year-to-year league. You don't want to have the bad, rap of being, a 3-14 team or a 4-13 team going into your second year of coaching. People start looking at it and be like, oh, he couldn't do anything with what he had. I get that side of it too, but when is that conversation going to switch? I feel like it's got to switch. The easy answer, right, is I heard this on the score today. The easy answer is when they miss the playoffs or when they're out of the playoffs. But I think it has to be sooner because it was the fucking New York Giants, guys. The New York Giants. Like, you're not playing a Super Bowl contending team. Like, you should have been able to open it up and do more creative things. And I think that's my biggest takeaway. Fields improved. He wasn't great. I'm really concerned about the conservative nature of that game. I really hope it's not a sign of things to come because if so, we're not winning anything with this regime.
I mean, I think the Bears are, I don't think the conservative nature is out of just, stubbornness on the Bears' part. I think they're genuinely concerned for Fields himself because he's been sacked 16 times already this season.
6 times on Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, so 6 times this past Sunday, 5 times the week before. He's getting banged around a lot, and there's still 13 games left to go. So the conservative nature is also by necessity because they feel they need to try and protect him as best they can. But the wide receivers aren't getting open. The offensive line can't pass protect, and they're trying to run the ball as much as they can, but there's only so much they can do. So, it's them trying to do what's best for their young quarterback. And right now, it's basically survival mode, just trying to run the ball, trying to, keep the defense from pinning their ears back as much as they can, and hoping as the familiarity of the offense sort of starts to settle in from week to week, guys will start executing better. And once that happens, maybe then they'll start trying to open up the offense a little bit more. But until that time, I think we're going to be in store for more of what we've been seeing.
I think we should also keep in mind. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yeah, much better.
Sorry. I think we should also keep in mind this offense generally takes a while to master. I think we've seen, even teams with good quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and other folks in the past have sometimes struggled with this scheme. I know last year Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay were almost an anomaly in terms of like getting it down, year one. But generally, this offense does take some time. So I think the execution part will come. I think the conservatism, and I mentioned this in a Twitter thread today, I think the conservatism is what bothers me most because it's bad process.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Preach it louder. Preach it louder.
I've been saying this like for a while because when you have like these defensive head coaches that came from another era that, you think like Matt Eberflus is maybe like a next-gen Lovie Smith because he's learned from Lovie Smith's failures and maybe he'll apply that here. But I think so far through the first 4 games, we have seen too many instances that are a little bit reminiscent of Lovie, punt in this situation, rely on the defense in this situation. And I get that the defense is a better unit right now, but just sometimes it's just the process needs to transcend the situation of your football team and going for it. Let's say the first drive, right? 4th and 1 after a 3rd down run, 3rd and 6 run, I think it was. They ran it, got to 4th and 1. The only reason it makes sense to run it there is if you decide to go for it on 4th down. You already have a play lined up. They decided to kick a field goal, make it 3-0. It just doesn't make sense. So I wish some of these things can be, a little bit more conservative, or like kind of go away from the conservatism. They may not work, right? I mean, the team may not be talented enough or, tight enough with their execution where the process will work out, but the process needs to make sense. And that hasn't made sense so far to the first 4 weeks. And I think that's the most upsetting part because Eberflus, like, this is just who he is, right? It's not going to get better, right, over the next several years. Like, this is what he's kind of grown up with. This is what he believes in. And, unless the Bears start seeing some significant success, this may kind of continue. This may end up being who he is, and
see it can't. That's not how it can't. That's not how you win in the NFL. I get that you trust your gut. I get these guys are prideful. They've been in every position known to mankind, from high school gridiron to college to professionals to being ball boy. Like, they've been around the game. They trust their process. I understand that, but sometimes you got to get out of your own way, man. Yeah. Punting the ball 3 minutes. I know that the argument will always be, and we'll hear this from some Bears fans who love defense and running. We hear it all the time on Twitter. Well, the process worked. They got a quick 3 and out, and there was a punt away. And, Bayless just makes the catch. No. Did you see that offense trying to move the ball on Sunday? They had to go 3/4 of the field, even if Bayless makes that catch and doesn't fumble it. Bayless just made it a quicker death. That's all he did. That's all that was. Because you would have found yourself in a similar situation. They did it all game. 3rd and short, 4th and short, run the ball. There was no creativity. It was just too, I don't know, it was too bland. And I would have, flipping the field or trying to punt the ball from the 50-yard line is never a good idea unless you're playing, unless you're in a, playoff game against an opponent that's clearly out measuring you and you can tell out hustling you. Then you punt the ball away if it's early enough. But that would be the only situation that would ever make sense. You're down you're down 8 points. What are you doing, man? Like, trust your offense. Fields was finding ways to pick up first downs on 3rd and long. They picked up a 3rd and 20 earlier in that game with a screen pass. There's ways to do it. Trust your quarterback in that situation. Pick up the first down and go for it. I really just... The process didn't make sense. You're right. That's the best way to put it.
You guys might remember a game. It was the Bears at the Lions. This was a few years ago. John Fox was the head coach. It was like the Bears were down by 8. It was like 20 seconds left in the game. It's at Ford Field. Jay Cutler threw like this random like bomb, with like 20 seconds left. It was a prayer. This was after John Fox elected to punt and waste a lot of time, and they eventually ended up scoring by a miracle. They lost the game in overtime, but Fox was asked about the game after the game. He was like, "Well, we did go and score at the end of the game, so it kind of worked out." And it's like, results does not mean good process. Like sometimes you get lucky. This is the kind of the same situation. I mean, Matt Eberflus yesterday in his end of game press conference basically said, like, oh, we wanted to punt there, we wanted to pin them back, and I can understand that if his thought process was, well, Daniel Jones is injured, Tyrod Taylor's injured, they're going to go wildcat with Saquon Barkley this entire time from their own 2-yard line or whatever it was, and we have confidence that we'll stop them there because they have to be conservative. Like, if that went into the thought process, I can understand it. I still disagree. I still think they have to go for it there, but I can understand it. But this isn't that I can guarantee you that's not kind of what's going through his head. He's not thinking about Barkley as the quarterback here. He's thinking about, oh, well, I want to rely on my defense and blah, blah, blah. I think we can, play the field position game, which sure, but at the end of the day, like, you'd rather hang on to that possession, 4th and 5, with you should have a play for 4th and 5 or whatever it was, 4th and 3, rather than maybe we'll go down the field 75 yards with, a minute 11 left on the clock. I mean, what confidence did you have that was going to happen?
Right. Why is that so like? Why is that such a difficult conversation to have in the coaching room? Why, like, Erik? Do you get that at all? Because I don't. I don't understand how that's not. You have an offense that's struggling to move the ball. It's basic math. You want to go 40 yards or 75?
I mean, it's an absolutely fair criticism and one I agree with. I do believe they should have gone for it, but to also be fair, it worked out. They got the quick 3 and out. But my problem with that whole situation was, yes, you got the 3 and out, but they were also punting to a guy who was playing in his first NFL football game. So you were relying on him in such a high pressure moment in his first game. That's begging for disaster, which ended up playing out that way. So I'd rather keep the ball in the hands of the guy who's got experience, Justin Fields, who's played in this tough atmosphere already for mostly 4 quarters, and give him a chance to make a play. He's been making plays most of the second half, with his legs, a couple of times with his arm. I mean, show some confidence in him to go make a play and make something happen. Give the offense a little bit of a jolt if he can, and maybe that'll turn things around for you. They ended up going, the other route, and it ended up biting them in the ass. And I think Eberflus is forced to reflect on that, and maybe he might, adjust his thinking next time. I highly doubt it, just because he's in that mode right now where there's a lot of people he doesn't think he can trust. He's in evaluation mode right now, and there's a lot of players I get the general feeling that he doesn't have a high opinion of yet. Maybe he will later in the season, but there's a lot of people he doesn't trust, and most of the people he does trust are on the defensive side of the football. So that's kind of where we're at right now. He doesn't trust a lot of people on offense. So when he feels that the game needs to be put in somebody's hands, he's going to lean defense.
So we're back to the same conversation that we've been having the last couple of weeks. What's more important, developing an offensive scheme and developing good, good talent and good habits, or is it about winning football games? And I feel like there's a disconnect. I feel like some players, they obviously all want to win games, but there's got to be, everybody's been talking about this forever. There has to be some sort of, recognition in your own head that, hey, we're not winning anything this year. We know that. So why can't there be a general consensus on developing better habits offensively and going with a modern day offense? Because I'm struggling to come to grasps with things like this, like Green Bay game. I mean, the conservative approach last week, not letting Fields throw the ball. You had 3 timeouts and, what was it, 30 or 40 seconds left going into halftime. Why? Like, why, dude? That is just not. If you look at every great coach, if you look at the 5 best coaches in the NFL, none of them would do that. None, unless they had, a 5-score lead. Then you'll just take a knee and go in a half, not risk injury. But it has to change. It just has to. I don't know how else to say it.
and especially like situationally, right? I mean, the situations that you just brought up with almost halftime, blah blah blah. I think that's where they really need to make some of those changes, because going back to last year also, right? I mean, we talk about the identity of the football team. And I think I heard Erik say this while I was in the car. I bet it was cutting out a little bit. The identity of the football team is running the football. That's just who they are. We talked about, or we know Ryan Poles talked about, we want to have a tough football team, win in the trenches, blah, blah, blah. That only happens really when you run the ball well. You're not going to do that in pass blocking. So I understand that right now this is kind of who they are. This is the personnel they have. This is how they're going to be successful. If they can be ahead of the chains, if they can establish their will on opposing defensive lines, they can run the ball and keep possession. Unfortunately, that's not working very well in some of these games, but in some cases they have. But I'm okay with that, because you understand who you are as a team right now. People want to talk about Fields throwing it, but they also want to talk about Fields doesn't have anyone to throw to. Like, people are kind of talking sometimes out of both sides of their mouth. But the reality is this is who they are as a football team. But situationally, right, 2-minute drill, sometimes go and hurry up because you have a certain personnel grouping from a defensive perspective that you want to keep on the field because they're maybe a little bit lighter or maybe a little bit heavier, and you want to try to attack them downfield. They haven't done that yet. And maybe that's a little bit too advanced for Fields at this stage. We don't know. But that kind of stuff needs to change, because to your point, I mean, Kevin, like, yeah, like there are certain situations this year where they absolutely should have been, either throwing it deep or, have a slant route ready to beat a blitz or just something that makes sense. It isn't just running up the gut on second and long. The number of second and long run up the middle plays, especially when the box is stacked, is confounding to me. And I know Luke Getsy is not dumb. Like, this is not like something that he's deciding like, yeah, this will work this time. He's not insane. So something's going on for some reason, whether it's the coach or Matt Eberflus, or they really do not trust Fields to do anything, which you have a bigger problem at that point. I don't know what it is. I hope it improves over the next, now that they've kind of established a little bit about their program over the first, quarter of the season, and now they can try to open things up a little bit more. I hope that's the case, because I mean, honestly, I don't know about you guys, but for me, like, watching this team is an obligation at this point, right? It's not entertainment. Like, for us, it's an obligation.
They are playing a different sport.
Yeah, they are. They really are. So it's just, for us to come here and talk about this team is just like, it's just the same shit,
How many NFL
Almost
games
makes me wish we can start talking draft already.
I know, seriously.
How many games I sat on my couch all day yesterday and watched football games. I watched Geno Smith play well. I watched I watched who backed up for Tua? Who came in for Tua? Teddy Bridgewater on Thursday. Bridgewater.
Andy Dalton for the Saints played amazing.
Andy Dalton brought them back into overtime with a throw over the middle to Olave for like 35 yards and brought them back into the game. Why do the Bears make offense so hard? It cannot be that hard, man.
Talent. It all goes back to talent. Look back over the last 10 years that they're drafting on the offensive side of the football. It's atrocious. It's been atrocious, and there's no getting around it. Their wide receiver picks have mostly sucked outside of Mooney, who they basically lucked into. Their offensive line picks out of Cody Whitehair have pretty much sucked. I mean, it goes down the list. They haven't drafted well on the offensive side of the football for a very long time, and that's what's been holding them back for a very long time. And until that changes, hopefully under Ryan Poles, it's going to continue to look like they're stuck in the friggin' 1950s. So, this is just something we're going to have to suffer through until hopefully Poles can clean up the mess that was left behind.
I think that's the thing that's most painful, is like, this is going to be a weekly, like, we knew exactly coming into this season that every Sunday is basically going to be like this. When we do our post-game shows and whatever, it's going to be the same, like, conversation, because this is just who they are right now. But you have, 13 more Sundays or whatever, 13 more post-game shows like this. You have then, the NFL draft and everything. Like, you have a year left to go up until the point that you can maybe start to see some more progress. Up until then, we have to keep talking about the same stuff. It just feels kind of like purgatory a little bit. And I'm sorry for the fans that are listening into this and feeling like there's no end in sight, because right now it feels that way. It really does. But all you can hope to see over the next 13 games is improvement. Yesterday we saw some, not enough, but it was some. Again, it was a Giants team missing half their fucking starters.
That's the thing, dude.
So
they were missing their top 3 receivers yesterday. You knew the game plan was going to be run the
pass
ball.
all that well. It's just the Bears couldn't stop the run. I mean,
That's
what it boils down to. 260 yards on the ground.
You knew
Jones
that's
didn't have to do anything, really.
I know. It's maddening because you knew that's what it was going to be. You knew that they were going to run the ball, and it still didn't matter. That's how good Saquon is, though. I mean, okay, let's get off of this game. We're not going to go back and change it. You got an NFC North opponent that you're going up to that you're not playing last week of the season up in Minnesota for the first time in what seems like a decade.
Yeah, basically.
Bears always finish the year in Minnesota, but Minnesota Viking week, Kirk Cousins, who is generally pretty damn good in the month of October. He's looked really damn good to start the year. That Vikings game, I know that defensively they struggled, and Andy Dalton kept it close, and I think the Bears are going to get absolutely boat raced on Sunday. I know that they've had general success against the Vikings over the last couple of years, with the exception of last year. The Vikings beat them twice. You're going to be able to get to Kirk a few times, but man, with the way that Justin Jefferson is playing at, offensive player of the year caliber again, and the way that they got a great running back room. Alexander Madison's been a great short down back for them. Dalvin Cook's been great when he's healthy, and he's been healthy this year for the most part. They're going to get boat raced on Sunday. I'm telling you, I know people like to make fun of Kirk Cousins. He's looked really, really accurate. He's looked very confident, and he's hanging in the pocket, taking hits because he knows he has a guy that can do it all. And if Jalen Johnson is still hurt with this quad injury, good night. I mean, Kyler Gordon is going to get smoked trying to defend Justin Jefferson on Sunday. It could get real bad real quick. I already took Vikings. I'm taking Justin Jefferson's over his yardage, and I'm taking anytime touchdown for him. I'm really concerned, and I just think that I could be wrong. I was wrong about Giants. I thought the Bears were going to win that game. I could be wrong about this one too. Of all the NFC North opponents, Bears do play the Vikings genuinely the best. So maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. I don't think I'm going to be wrong.
I don't think you are either. It's just a bad matchup for the Bears right now. The Bears can't keep up with that offense, and their defense can't really get stops because the Vikings, everybody talks about Justin Jefferson, justifiably so. He's an absolute superstar. But right now, Dalvin Cook is going to be their biggest worry because, they consistently haven't been able to stop the run all year. And you lose some of your best run defenders in Eddie Golden, even though he wasn't his old self by the time he was done. Akeem Hicks is out. Those guys were a big reason they were able to stop Dalvin Cook, and now they're out of the picture. Their defensive tackle situation is probably top 2 in terms of worst situation on this team right now. They can't stop the run. They can't really rush the passer all that well. And when you have a situation like that, it's a glutton for punishment against a team like this. So, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears get blown out, just because they won't be able to keep up if, Minnesota does what it does on its home turfs, which is score points. So, it's going to be one of those games where you're going to feel frustrated, where you're just going to feel inferior to a team that's just better constructed and has been better built, even though I still don't think they're going to go far in the playoffs if and when they do make it there. Right now, they're just a better built team, and the Bears are going to need some time to get to that point. But it's going to be one of those games where they might pull off a bit of a surprise, but I think they're not going to be close in that game just because I don't think the offense is going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to play in Minnesota. I mean, and you think about the key matchups in this game. Vikings offensive line against the Bears defensive line, advantage Minnesota. Quarterback, advantage Minnesota. Running back, probably at this stage, advantage Minnesota. Wide receivers, of course, against the Bears secondary. Oof. I mean, Justin Jefferson alone, I mean, it's just wow.
And I know people will point out right away, they'll be like, oh, well, he didn't do anything weeks 2 and 3. Yeah, but week 1 and week 4.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely destroyed Marshawn Lattimore, one of the best man cover corners in the game. He killed him, and it was just wow. So the Bears don't have anyone to match up. I mean, even if you try to bracket him, then there's Adam Thielen, and then there's Irv Smith. Like, you have a lot of players on from Minnesota's offense. Kevin O'Connell is, so far, I'm very impressed with what he's been able to do schematically. The Bears offensive line against that defensive line, that pass rush is very good right now. Neil Hunter, Zadarius Smith, like they're playing well. They will stop the run probably, and now you have Cody Whitehair gone, so you have Sam Mustipher still there. So it's just, they are outmatched and outnumbered in every key area, in all the matchups. So I don't see. I did an early prediction in my post game article. I think it's going to be pretty ugly. The Bears will be lucky if they're within a couple scores by the time the fourth quarter rolls around.
You can book it too that Harrison Smith will have 2 interceptions. He seems to always go off against this Bears offense, no matter when dude's in his mid 30s and he's still absolutely balling out for them. He's had a great start to the year. He's honestly one of the most underrated defensive backs in the league.
He's been that way for a decade. He's been awesome.
He's just fundamentally sound, hits hard, forces fumbles, great in zone coverage. I thinking about it, and you put it best. You match up 22 positions on 22 positions, all starters on both sides of the field. I don't think the Bears have really any advantages in this game.
No.
And the Vikings, listen, they're a team that I always say this, one of my favorite football quotes is you're only as good as your quarterback is. And, people like to rag on Kirk Cousins, myself included. I love to rag on Kirk Cousins because he's been in the situation so many times where he just can't get, he'll get him to the playoffs. He'll do some really cool things. He threw for over 4,000 yards last year. He's going to do that again this year too, easily. I mean, if he's healthy, he's easily going to do that. He's playing, and it's interesting because his first couple of years in Minnesota, when the Bears had they had a decent team offensively, they were the 2018 team in 2019 when they were moving the ball, people were like, oh, Kirk stinks. Like Mitch is outplaying him here and there, and it's kind of a fun matchup. Watching these first 4 Vikings games of this year, and he had a good year last year. This is the most confident I've ever seen Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's hanging in the pocket. He's getting drilled, making third down back shoulder throws to the sideline. You can clearly tell that he knows that he's going to throw the ball up there and his guys are going to come down with it, man. And it's going to be ugly on Sunday. It's going to be a 3-score game.
Yeah, it helps to be away from Mike Zimmer, I'll tell you that.
Positive side is they'll probably let Justin start to chuck it at some point.
Yeah, I guess so.
Bears fans will get their wish.
So where do we go from here? We all have the Vikings, 2 and 3. Where do we go? What is are we shifting our focus on something else here, or is it going to be more of the same? Is there something that we can turn our heads and kind of hang our hat on maybe after this game?
They might beat the Commanders. I don't think the Commanders are a very good football team right now. They seem out of sorts. I don't know what's going on with them. But after that, New England, Dallas, with those pass rushes and those coach defenses, I think they're probably going to end up being like 3 and 5 by the time they're, through that 8th game. So they're going to start. I'm questioning what they're going to do at the trade deadline. Are they going to do a bit of a fire sale, sell off some of their veterans, Robert Quinn, maybe even Roquan Smith? Who knows? There's just no knowing what they might try to do. Stack some extra picks, prepare for next year. I think that's a genuine possibility if there's anybody that they might be able to, get off the roster, get some, more cap space, all that sort of stuff. So I would be eyeing the end of this month and seeing, if things are starting to go downhill a little bit, they absolutely might consider selling off a few more assets to start, preparing for next year.
And along those lines, I'd like to see maybe, it's hard to, if we're from a fan perspective or just like a observer analyst perspective, it makes sense to just say like, oh, they should start playing the young guys. And obviously that'd be nice, but for example, Al-Quadin Muhammad, just bench that guy. He sucks. Put in Travis Gibson, like those kinds of things like you'd like to see. But these guys, either because of personal attachment, like, AQM and Matt Eberflus, or some other reason, like, oh, we want to be serious about winning. We want to give the veterans the respect they deserve, like all this other shit. Like sometimes that just probably won't happen. So I would like to see some of that. I'd like to see a youth movement at some other positions that haven't been that this year, even though this team is pretty young. But like, it's just, I wish, I wish some of that would happen. Like maybe even like from a receiver perspective, maybe they elevate some guys from the practice squad and see, okay, Dante Pettis is not the reclamation project maybe that the Bears thought. So let's put in, I don't know. There was a guy that they just recently, Reggie Roberson, for example, like that guy. Like why not? See what he has. But it's going to be hard to. It's hard
It
to.
doesn't seem like that's their philosophy.
It's
They
not.
want to
Yeah.
win.
Really not.
They
Still
want
trying to win.
Most coaches.
But they're going to have to reach a certain point with their record before they start considering playing the young guys, and they're not there right now. They see themselves as 2-2. They're still, not nearly out of the NFC picture yet, and it's probably going to be a few more weeks of, drubbings and, falling into a losing record before they start to accept that they might not just might not be a very good football team.
I think that was another good point. You brought up though the trade deadline, and you brought up maybe guys like Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith. Roquan played better on Sunday. Robert Quinn, though, was minimized. He made no impact on that game. And Erik, or Drew, you say Travis Gibson, and it's so funny that I was just so focused on the offense just being inept yesterday that I didn't even realize where the hell was Travis Gibson. He had a good couple weeks to start the year, and you're right. I feel like I just I've not heard his name at all. And this brings me back to the conversation of the offensive line again, where you hear Eberflus talk about having a good practice, and you're gonna put Tevin Jenkins on the bench because he had a bad Wednesday practice, and you're gonna start somebody who's clearly worse.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I want to believe it's still early. I'm not gonna say it's a coaching issue. But are we already putting personal vendettas over trying to win football games? Because I don't know, man. Like, is that like something I need to be concerned about? Because it's something I have to bring up because we're seeing it twice now. Travis Gibson's a great point, and I almost didn't even bring him up tonight, and I wanted to. It's a great point. I didn't see him. I don't even know how many snaps he took on. Let me see.
We're less than 50%. AQM got significantly more percentage-wise.
The only explanation I can think of for Muhammad playing more is because they trust his run defense more than, Gibson's, which I guess makes sense considering how awful their run defense is, but it doesn't seem to be helping that much. So you might as well be giving those reps to somebody who's actually making an impact on the game.
Yeah.
Travis has 2 or 3 sacks this year. Put Aaron Rodgers down, look good.
He's got the most pressures on the team, and he hasn't played nearly the same amount of snaps.
So there you go. That alone kind of preaches to this counterintuitive, thing we're going through. We want to win football games, but I also, you want to develop good habits. Which is it, man? Make up your mind. And, it's still too early to put any labels on a coaching staff. But right now, after Sunday, Drew, I appreciate you saying this because you're usually one of the last people to go after, coaching. You'll more so look at the talent and, the concept of what happened on the field. But the fact that you're even saying, listen, like that didn't make sense. Like we shouldn't be having those conversations against bad football teams.
The problem is we've seen this before. Like we went
Giants.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Giants. Like we've seen this philosophy before, and so I'm quicker generally to kind of like be like, okay, this is the same shit that we've seen. It clearly didn't work, or so that kind of stuff. So I'm a little bit maybe I need to give Eberflus more time. And I'm not saying we need to,
Right.
like the Bears need to fire him right away. But
No,
I'm seeing those same patterns that were problematic during Lovie Smith's time, and I may mention this on Twitter as well. I'm like, those are bad. Those are warning signs. And so when you look at, and potentially in the future, you look at the way these guys are having planning meetings to prepare for the draft, or what's our free agency period going to be, and I can absolutely see Eberflus being like, you know what, Ryan, fuck the wide receiver. If you give me that 3 technique, I tell you, we're gonna have the number 1 defense, and we're gonna do all this stuff. Like maybe, but like, who cares? Like who cares? Like just like
can we get to a new brand? Yeah.
Build the offense, and whether that's a receiver, whether that's an offensive lineman, whether it's a quarterback, I don't care. Just focus and invest in that side of the ball. You know what? What I want to see? I want to see the Detroit Lions offensive football team. Like the Lions are awesome.
They're number 1 in the league in scoring offense.
And it's none of it is fluky. Like, it is amazing design,
Number
awesome
1.
offensive line, awesome run game concepts, awesome passing concepts. Jared Goff looks kind of reborn. Of course, he's doing everything within the structure of the scheme, but the scheme is great. Like, they look fun. They look well coached. Like, their defense blows. They have they have spent the least on their defense, so they expected their defense to suck. Their offense is young, it's talented, it's well invested, it's well designed. It is fun. It is absolutely fun. Like,
It goes back to talent. The scheme looks great when the talent's great. I mean, you've got
absolutely
Pro Bowl caliber talent across the offensive line. You've got a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. Their running backs are good. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown who's starting to look like a star. So yeah, it all goes back to talent. Everything looks better when you've got guys who can execute and play at a high level, which the Bears don't have. So that's why it's such a chore to watch their offense.
You know what's crazy to think about the Lions too? They're doing it with Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift's obviously one of the most underrated backs in the league, just a phenomenal dual threat back, but he's been injured. Jamal Williams filled those shoes no problem. Oh yeah, they're also doing this without their first round pick, Jameson Williams, too. One of their first round picks.
Yeah, it's like Jameson Williams added this offense. Insane.
It's the Lions, man. They put up 45 points on
the Bears. They're gonna blow the doors off the Bears.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm afraid you're right.
It's a horrible matchup for Chicago.
They can't. Yeah, Jared Goff, you're right. The rollouts and the scheme it's fun.
You won't have to roll out. They're going to run it right down their throat with that offensive line.
7.5 yards a carry, 45 minutes of possession. Like, it is going to be so much like fun to watch, but like obviously painful for Bears fans. But just like that kind of stuff is just so fun. Like, it's when it's just like imposing your will, which is what they do really well, and they just impose your will, and there's nothing you can do to stop us.
Let's see. When do they play the Lions? Play the Lions week 10.
Mm-hmm. In Chicago, right? And then later on at Ford Field.
Week 10 versus Lions, yeah, and then on the road, week 17. Okay, interesting.
Oof.
Yeah, that's going to be. I'm telling you guys, yeah, if you're watching right now and you haven't watched Lions yet this year, they're coming.
It's fun.
It's coming, and their defense is bad. It's really bad, but they have some building blocks there. They have a coach who really cares and has everybody bought in. They don't have the quarterback, but the quarterback's playing well enough right now. And I'll tell you, they got the weapons. They're in a much better position than the Bears are right now, and it's really not even in the same ballpark.
Well, they should be. How many high first round picks have they been stacking on this roster?
So we'll wait and see to week 10 on that one. But Vikings first. Vikings coming up on Sunday. It's a noon game up in Minnesota. There, Kirk Cousins. Obviously, like I said, you won't hear me praise him much, but he's been playing really well this year. I got the Vikings by 2 touchdowns on Sunday. What do you guys got?
I had 31-13 Vikings.
Okay.
Sounds about right. I had the Bears 34-20, I think was the score I had it inside my head. So, pretty much an ugly one.
You have the Bears? Or you
No,
have
Minnesota over the Bears.
You have Minnesota over the Bears. For sure. Well, guys, appreciate everybody hopping in, leaving their questions and comments. Anything else before we get on out of here? We'll be doing these shows, I think, every Monday after games and stuff, kind of doing a little bit of recapping. This will be our day moving forward here. But anything else we want to touch on before we get out of here? We pretty much covered it all. Conservative game plan and Fields improving a little bit, but not enough to win.
Not so much.
I think we've made fans miserable enough with this discussion.
Sorry, Bears fans. It'll get better, probably, maybe, possibly. Just one quick note, honestly, is just the parity in the NFL, man. Like, how many teams are 2-2? The Falcons are 2-2. Teams that no one expected to be 2-2. I mean, if the 49ers score holds up, they'll be 2-2.
It's only one winless team, which is kind of a surprise.
Yeah,
the Eagles.
Yeah,
that's undefeated. Winless is the Texans.
As the Texans, and it's just well, they almost beat the Bears. Of course they did. But it's just fun, like how it just feels like this season teams are more maybe talent deficient at quarterback. Maybe some quarterbacks have just not played well. Others are injured. Like it's a very interesting time in the NFL. Obviously, things are probably going to course correct, and you'll have your teams like become clear favorites, whether it's in the division or in the wild card seedings. But it's just interesting. Like this is one of those seasons where, again, you feel bad that the Bears are rebuilding to the extent that they are, because they could have been, a contender, and then who knows what happens, and obviously maybe not win a Super Bowl, but it's just like excitement, right? Like this is the year they choose to just be completely shitty. It's just one of those things. So next year they're going to have a harder schedule and all that kind of stuff. But it's just fascinating. Right now the NFL is just so messy.
Chiefs are winning the whole thing.
And the positive news for the Bears is, if things go the way they seem to be trending, they're going to have a top 5 pick next year. They're going to have more cap space than anybody. So they have a chance to have a really, really productive offseason if things go, according to plan for Ryan Poles. So there are still reasons to be excited. It's just you're going to have to wait for it, which is always the hard part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, until then, enjoy the primetime games. I saw this take on Twitter last night. It was from my guy, Kevin Lapka, who just got a job with The Score. He does digital and stuff over there. Shout out to him. He also has a great Bears podcast, Bears Nation podcast. He tweeted out last night, I wouldn't mind if the NFL just put the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football every week. And he's not wrong.
Completely fair.
That team kicks ass. I love watching Kansas City play football. They're going to win the Super Bowl this year.
Man, that rebuilt offensive line is so impressive, and it gives me hope that the Bears can sort of do something similar with a quick retool, because I think they rebuilt it in one offseason, which is just absolutely unheard of. And they did it without a first-round pick. I think it was like a second or third-round pick, which was Humphrey, the center, and then a couple of, either a trade acquisition and a free agent acquisition. So, if the Chiefs can do it, and Poles saw the whole thing done himself when he was there with them, it gives me hope that they can do something similar once the resources are in order next offseason.
The difference between Patrick Mahomes being, good, but like not as like otherworldly as he was, like, as he had been, like for example last year, to being back to otherworldly this year. You know what the difference is? Our guy Matt Nagy's back there.
God,
coaching him up.
Matt Nagy to Wisconsin. Matt Nagy go coach the Badgers.
Mahomes' best season was 18 when Matt Nagy was gone.
Matt Nagy coached him up before that, and then now he's back. Mahomes is back to his MVP caliber now that our guy Matt Nagy's back there. But
it's true.
Just did you guys see that report where apparently Nagy is the succession planning when Andy Reid retires?
Oh God, I hope so.
Where the hell did you read that?
It was a rumor. I can't remember who said it. I think it was someone from The Athletic. I think Reid has kind of like prepared people, like, hey, whenever I, whenever I retire, Matt's going to take the reins. I'll try to find that article and share.
Wow. Share that if you can find it. That's really...
that would be fun.
Talk about walking into a great situation for Matt. I mean, if he was able to pull that off and somehow get all of the Chiefs ownership on his side to hire him, that'd be good for him. I don't think that's going to happen, but who knows what goes on between those walls. All I know is that, man, I love watching that Chiefs team play. They're well-oiled
machine.
They're the best team in football. And I think a lot of people we wanted to overlook because of how good the AFC West was going to be this year. I think that Russ is obviously still. I don't care. And people are like, oh, he's struggling. He's not playing well. You're right, he's not, but he's still Russ. He's still elite. I think he'll get back to that at some point. But the Raiders just got their first win on Sunday. They're 1-3. They're already pretty much. They're falling out of it. The Chargers have been just unbelievably banged up. And honestly, even if they weren't, I don't think it really matters. I think so many people were looking at what was new and not what was right in front of them, and that's Patrick Mahomes being the best player in the NFL. And
it's Ric Flair, man. To be the man, you got to beat the man.
Yeah,
and nobody has.
Yeah, no, they're gonna, now that Pat in September. If you really want to have a good time, go look up Patrick Mahomes' record in September and his numbers in September. It is just absolutely silly,
mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's silly, and that is my Super Bowl prediction. Chiefs are going to win it this year. I put money on them after watching last night. They just absolutely took Tampa to the cleaners.
Yeah,
and they're on a whole new level. They just know how to do it. No Tyreek Hill, no problem. Figure it out. It's crazy, man. Jealous. Maybe we'll get to that point someday.
The last thing I'm going to say, Tom Brady is 45 years old.
Still balling.
They ran the ball 6 times last year, and all 6 plays sucked. They threw the ball 52 or whatever times, and they were pretty much unstoppable when they threw the ball.
He had 385 yards passing yesterday. Yeah, it's crazy. 3 touchdowns, almost 400 yards passing.
It's unfathomable. It is like it's not even like
he's throwing darts too. Yeah, it's not just these little layup passes. It's just
accurate. Arm strength is still there. I mean, I'm literally at a loss for words of how good he is. Ridiculous. 45.
The best.
God.
Yeah. Treasure it while we have it. I was really sad when we heard he was retiring. I was so glad to hear he was coming back. I really, really enjoy watching Tom Brady play football.
Yeah. It's so much fun. Like how quick he is, and like, but the one thing I will say, okay, no, the last thing I'm going to say, I promise, is like he kind of seems a little bit sad on the sidelines. I think maybe that whole like the rumors about like Giselle not being happy that he came back and everything, like maybe it's impacting him because he doesn't seem to be playing with the same fire or joy. He's just kind of out there. Maybe it's just me, but I mean he's still so fucking good. Like marital problems or not, like he's just.
They've just had bad execution. It's not been his fault at all. It's been dropped passes and injuries that have hurt them to start the year. They're still going to be in it at the end. I mean, they're still going to be right there. They're a playoff team, and I just don't think that I worry about the health. Chris Godwin was holding his back, holding his leg yesterday. Julio Jones has got a knee problem.
I think they'll get healthy just enough to beat the Packers in the playoffs.
Seems to be the way, right? You just know those. You have to hope that just for a fun storyline for those two to their last matchup against each other to be in a playoff matchup. I feel like that would be pretty great to see. That would be fun, but doesn't matter, man. Doesn't matter who comes out of the NFC. The Chiefs are just, if Mahomes is healthy, he's on a mission to win MVP and a Super Bowl this year. He looks unbelievable. So take that with what you will. I don't know. All right, let's get on out of here. Give us follows. You see our bottom left-hand corner. You see our Twitter handles. What did I say? Handles. At Wells15 Kevin, at Erik Lambert 1, at Dhruv Cole, at ClubDub_podcast. And of course, we are sponsored by Sports Mockery and sportsmockery.com. Go ahead, give all the articles a read as we get you ready for the Vikings week up in Minnesota on Sunday. We will talk to you guys next week. Peace.